Welcome in, everybody. I'm Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. Thank you for joining in tonight. It is a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, here on the East Coast. Did I just say 7 p.m. Eastern on the East Coast? I might have. So, redundancy, a great and wonderful way to talk. It is what it is. Nonetheless, thank you all for joining in tonight through the starting off strong with the redundancy. Keeping in line with the redundancy, we're going to keep repeating ourselves, I guess. But it is what it is. So thank you all for joining in. Thank you all for coming in and enjoying another wonderful discussion with me, Jason Lyon, Mr. America, the Bearded Truth. I appreciate you all for joining in. We got a good lineup going tonight. I'll give a little recap. Last night I went on the radio down in Columbia, South Carolina. So thank you to Shane Sweeney for having me on there for Make the Point Radio. It was a fantastic time. Got to co-host that for a strong 3 hours. A lot of good information being passed, and it was a great time. I felt very excited. Very excited to come on and be able to talk to the people of Columbia, as well as those people who were tuning in last night at MakeThePointRadio.com. It was a great time. Hopefully no car accidents were had. Hopefully we were keeping people on the bigger picture of things and focusing on that. So tonight, one of the things that we're going to talk about is we're going to be talking about the Dan Crenshaw and the what was the comedians, if you will, Pete Davidson's comedic attempt on SNL. We're going to talk about that. We're going to break it down. We'll be talking a little bit about what's going on with Yemen. So President Trump came out and was talking about Yemen, what we're going to be doing in hopes of removing some of American support for the genocide that's occurring over there. So it's a beautiful transition. It's a beautiful change, and let's hope that this is another big promise made and a promise kept by the Trump administration. The genocide that's been going on in Yemen for years, or the attempt thereof. It would be nice to see that going away. And then we're also going to be talking a little bit more about the Jim Acosta situation. There's actually murmurs going on that there will be a lawsuit. That right there is something that's going to create a lot of vitriol. And so I think that it's really important that we do break this down and we do talk about that, because it's obviously a huge situation. It's obviously a big problem that's going on. So thank you all for joining in tonight, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. I'm almost finished sharing this out, and then once we're done sharing this, then we'll be right on the way of getting into the topic. So I hope you guys all are enjoying your weekend. You got to enjoy some relaxation, and you're enjoying what it is that you're doing. So thank you all for sharing so far, for helping out. I see you, Yukon Camper. Welcome in, good sir. I always appreciate when you come in here. I know you were big support here, so thank you very much for what you've done. I want to first start off, and I want to talk about the Yemen situation, because this is something that we should be riling around, right? We should be riling around the positive things about trying to help make the world a little bit of a better place. And this is from USAA Today. Under increasing pressure from Congress, the Trump administration will curb its assistance to Saudi Arabia's deadly military campaign in Yemen. Officials confirmed Friday. The Defense and State Department said Friday that the U.S. would stop refueling Saudi fighter planes as the regime undertakes bombing campaigns that have resulted in thousands of civilian casualties, right? This is where Saudi Arabia has been bombing the people of Yemen, bombing their weddings, their celebrations, their schools, the hospitals. They've been bombing pretty well, almost religiously, in that area in order to take out their quote-unquote targets. And this has resulted in, like I said, thousands of civilian casualties. So it's nice to see that the Trump administration and Congress are working to actually stand against that, to stand against the idea that we're going to be supporting a regime that is committing these atrocities. So it's a beautiful day to see that coming out on Friday. Let's hope that this is one of those promises made, promises kept, that there's an actual move going on to reduce the amount of conflict, or reduce the amount of terror, reduce the amount of anguish that is being done with American support. As you guys know, I've been pretty critical of what we do, because I think if we are supposed to be the greatest nation in the country or in the world, if we're supposed to be the greatest, then at the same time we should be emulating the greatest. We should be trying to support, not break down. And supporting somebody else breaking things down means that we ourselves are complicit in that. So it's a beautiful thing to see us stand against that in that way. So I'm excited to see this, right? The Yemen topic has been a topic that's been getting hit on by, speakers on the left, speakers on the right, as well as the libertarians. And so I think that this is a moment in which we can all cherish, and we can have a robust conversation about this, and really bring it into the forefront of exactly the atrocities that are being committed and how America has been supporting them. So it's a beautiful thing. The next thing I wanted to get into. So if you guys remember all the way back to the situation of James Gunn back a couple months ago, right? We had Mike Cernovich and a couple other political figures, couple of talking heads of the right and of the independents that started trying to be the arbiters of what is allowed to be a joke and what is not allowed to be a joke. So on SNL last week, we had Pete Davidson on SNL, and he had a little skit. And the skit was first off, he started off by attacking himself. He was like, "Look, I moved back in with my mom, and now I'm following politics." So he's already started off on hating himself, and he goes through and he talks about some of the Republicans, right? He goes after Rick Scott. He goes after King. I don't think it was Stephen King. It was another one of the kings from New York. And then he goes after Dan Crenshaw. And when he goes after Dan Crenshaw, he's basically mocking him because he has an eyepiece, right? The eyepiece in which Dan obtained because of an ID in Afghanistan on his third tour. So mocking him made this. Thank you so much, Thomas. I appreciate that. It's a good day to give some credit for stuff like that. I appreciate it. I don't think I'm necessarily as worthy as a lot of other people, but thank you for that. So Dan Crenshaw received, or was made a joke of, in a sense, right? And this caused a huge political upswing. This caused a lot of people to become genuinely upset and riled and filled with vitriol and visceral hatred for not just for Pete Davidson, the comedian, but also for SNL for espousing this. And we had a lot of people get outright outraged over this. And you can get upset about the jokes. You can find the jokes offensive. You can be as riled up as you want. Glad you're alive. Thank you. You could be as riled up as you want to, right? But what I saw from a lot of people was that there were demands for the boycotts of SNL. There was the attacks against Pete. There was people just saying this is a referendum on SNL as well as on the modern left. They're just all anti-Republican. They're anti-warriors. They're anti-veterans. They're anti-gold, or not Gold Star, Purple Heart recipients, right? And I think that what we really need to do is we need to step away from the politics a little bit, right? This was something that I wanted to come out and talk about, but I didn't feel comfortable with it. I didn't feel comfortable coming out and being in such blatant support for comedic jokes, right? It's not the fact that I like the jokes. It's not the fact that I agree with the jokes. It's not the fact that I think these jokes are funny, because I don't find humor in them. But it's the idea. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that, Vicious. The wife had called, so I was talking with her on the way home, and so the jokes was a joke. It was a bad joke. It was a horrible joke, but nonetheless a joke. And the backlash that he received, I think that he genuinely did feel sorry for what he'd said, right? He didn't just mock Republicans. He did mock Cuomo, which is a pretty easy target. And he even mocked himself even after the fact, right? Well, SNL had Pete come back on, Pete Davidson, and Pete Davidson actually gave an apology for it, right? Him being a comedian, him being immature in some ways, him not really I don't know how to word this. He's basically doesn't have the wisdom in order to know really the impact of it. He just saw the backlash, and I think that spurred him into making this apology. But he made the apology, and the apology seemed pretty genuine, right? He was like, I apologize. He gave the full story on what exactly happened with Dan Crenshaw, and he was like, look, it was his third tour, IED blast, lost his eye, right? It's a horrible thing. But he made an apology. And Dan pops into the scene, and when Dan pops into the scene, right, he comes back. He comes back, and they throw up a picture of Pete, and he's going off on him, right? He's just one of those kid toy trolls, and with a tapeworm, right? He is the blue crystal meth from Breaking Bad. And, he goes off on him a little bit. But at the end of the day, right, he says, this is what's better for the country, is that we can get away from the politics, and we can accept apologies, and we can change, and we can continue to move on. And some of the response that I seen from this, some of the response was just so egregious, so reprehensible, right? The right used to be about being able to forgive people, being able to say, look, if this person was sorry, then we can move on. And what I saw from a couple of conservatives, from a couple blue check marks, from a couple people on the accepted as a conservative view, was a flat denial of accepting it. Right? They said, look, this was SNL trying to save face. This was SNL trying to get people to accept. Stefan, welcome in, good sir. This was SNL trying to accept that they don't, not accept. They were trying to deflect, and they were just basically doing this for a PR. They were just trying to make sure that they saved face and still had a consumer base. And I think that once you get into that ideology, right, that Pete comes out and makes an apology, Dan accepts it, that this was all just a PR stunt. When we have that view, when you have people coming together and uniting and making amends with each other, and you want to spat all over that, I think that shows more about your own character, right? Your own visceral hatred, your own level of contempt for the other side, rather than trying to actually fight for unity, fight for accepting that, right? Accept that SNL pushed out an apology and trying to accept it at face value. Instead, what people are trying to do is they're trying to apply these motives. And one thing that we talk about a lot is not applying the motive, right? When somebody says, hey, I want to have tax cuts for all Americans, right? You don't say, well, you hate poor people, you hate these people, you hate those people, right? You just want a tax cut for the rich, right? You don't apply those motives. You say, all right, and you argue on that stance. When somebody says, I apologize, and somebody else says, I forgive you, right? You don't have a conversation surrounding that and say, it's a disgusting thing that this happened, right? Because you're just pushing for more division. You're pushing for more of a divorce between the left and the right. And so this was a big topic. This is a big thing where we actually have some signs of people coming together despite disagreeing so vehemently. And so I think I got to give props to Pete Davidson, right? For coming out and doing that and displaying what he did. Big ups for Dan Crenshaw, right? Dan Crenshaw really was the epitome of respect, of grace, of honor, right? The entire time he was never speaking disparagingly of Pete, of SNL, of others, right? He just took it in stride and he said, you guys are going to say stuff, and that is what it is, right? He rose above it. So he used the Michelle Obama quote, that is, when they go low, we go high. And Dan Crenshaw was epitomizing that very value. And so it was a beautiful thing. I'm thankful to see the apology and the people that are denouncing this, the people that are going against this, right? It's more of a testament of their character. It's more of portraying out who they are. And I think that we need to, if they're on your side, if they're on your political side, you need to give them that big check, and you can say, hey, let's accept the good when the good comes, because the good is not very prevalent right now. We don't have these actual actions where people can point out and say these people came from opposite sides of the spectrum, came together and made it better. Of course, if Pete comes out and makes another joke about another predominant veteran who got blasted, who has a Purple Heart, right? Then you can start saying there's a trend there, and there's obviously an issue with Pete. But if he makes one joke, gets hit for it, gets the blowback, makes an apology, and doesn't return in the same image, can you really fault the guy anymore? So I thought it was beautiful. I thought that entire situation started off, it could have been horrible, it could have been really reprehensible, it could have caused a serious outrage amongst everyone, and instead what we have was a strong moral adult and Dan Crenshaw coming together and making this be fixed. While we're also on the topic of SNL, of course, Lil Wayne was on the other day as well, and he was giving support for the troops. So, you know, if you guys are big on supporting the troops, and you guys are big on Veterans Day, which is of course today, and if you guys are big on that, right, Lil Wayne just said something beautiful. So you don't have to agree with Lil Wayne, you don't have to agree with his music, his politics, or anything else, but I think it's good to see when people come out and make opinions like that. It's a good thing, right? So I think SNL got their blowback. I think Pete got his blowback, and we will see how all that comes out in the long run. And I think it's a good, beautiful thing. So great thing happening there. I do want to talk a little bit about what is going on with the CNN. So, as you guys remember, last week we had the big, huge, egregious story of Jim Acosta versus Trump, right? Jim Acosta was being rude and bombastic, and being Jim Acosta during while questioning the president while in the press pool, and was refusing to give up his microphone, and was touched a couple times by an intern. The mic was attempted to be taken, right? And that whole situation became a literal bomb, and just blew up, and it was horrific to see on both sides of the aisle just exactly what was occurring. There was probably the biggest mistake that is out there was the fact that if you look at a video that was actually pushed out by Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who wasn't there for any of this, right? But being the press secretary for the president, you know, she came out in defense, and she posted a video, and this video was definitely doctored. It was doctored in the way that they sped up the motions. They sped up Jim Acosta and the intern being touched, and so it was portrayed in a way that made it look as if Jim Acosta was out there with his black belt karate chopping interns in order to maintain the mic, right? So, you know, when you push that out there, when you spin that out there, there's a huge issue there, right? You manipulated, or you utilized a video that manipulated the truth in order to make it look worse than what it was, right? Some people would say that that's defamation. Some people would say that's slanderous, that's lying. And that's kind of the route that CNN is going through. If you look at the actual original video, the undoctored video, what had occurred was Jim Acosta standing here with the microphone, and the intern is reaching across from this way, and his hand comes down. It was no chopping motion. His hand just dropped slightly, and there was contact between her as she was reaching for the microphone, and he says, "Pardon me, ma'am." You know, there's nothing about the way that was occurring that made you feel as if Jim Acosta was out there just trying to hit a woman or make a bigger scene than what was there. But it looked like a really big non-issue. And then what came of that afterwards was, of course, President Trump gave him a couple verbal lashes, and then the hard pass for Jim Acosta was removed. Basically, he can't pass through security just by going through, so it's a little more difficult, and he's been banned. So the banning and the Sarah Huckabee's video that she had distributed are the basis behind this lawsuit. He said that the White House had announced this week that it was revoking Jim Acosta's press pass and claimed that he placed his hands on an intern who tried to take his microphone during a press conference with Donald Trump. The video exchange showed that Acosta never made contact with the young woman. He did touch her. It wasn't a forceful touch. It wasn't like a defensive touch or anything else. But there was actual contact between the two individuals. There's four touches between the intern towards Acosta, and there was one that appeared from Acosta to the intern. And so now CNN is taking to Twitter and accused the White House press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, of making fraudulent accusations, right? So this is the video. And there's plenty of editing experts. And if you guys go onto my Twitter feed, I actually shared out a couple of these quote unquote experts to show how it was being manipulated. And so when you look at it and you see this, right, take your bias away. And that's it's bad to take a stance like that. We've reached out to the White House and got no response. So it is what it is, right? So they're going through and they're actually going for the defamation on this. Of course, what we see from a lot of people with this discussion is, hey, if CNN's going for defamation, if CNN's going for slander, then look at all the stories that they've misconstrued or misrepresented or lied about in order to support their narrative. And that is entirely a truthful claim, right? There's been a lot of egregious articles out there that have been built up in falsehoods, that have been built up in lies and everything else. If they are an objective story, so it's not an opinion one, then of course those become more susceptible to it. And then you have to find out who has the standing on there. And if there is standing, then yes, then there is a lawsuit. And you know, I think that in the climate that we're in, I think that we should be advocating that whenever a quote unquote a news agency that's supposed to be objective and just portraying the news, they should be held accountable, right? They should be held accountable for what they're saying, just the same as the administration, just the same as Congress, just the same as the judicial branch. Everyone in government or around it, the fourth wing of the government, the media, they all should be accountable, and they should all be telling the objective truth. And when they lie, they should be held accountable. It's not a partisan thing. It's not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing or a libertarian thing. It doesn't matter. What we are advocating for is for honesty and integrity. And I think that certainly we should be looking at this and saying, yeah, it's not really real, not really a good thing. When it comes to this video, though, the White House has defended itself against the allegations, and on Sunday, Counselor Kellyanne Conway admitted that the tape was indeed changed, sped up at the moment the young woman brushed against Jim Acosta's arm as she reached out for the microphone. So if it was changed, right, and you can admit to that, then you know that that's not a good thing. And her justification behind this was that the NFL does this as well, right? They do it all the time in sports to see if there's actually a first down or a touchdown. So I think I may be out of the loop a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that when they don't speed it up to see it, right? They slow it down. They go frame by frame to be able to tell, hey, did this go in or did this not go in, right? Because you're looking at lines, you're looking at how things are broken down. So when you speed things up, it's actually been proven that you're more likely to see what you want to see when things are sped up. And so I think that that's really what the purpose behind that was, behind the quote-unquote doctoring of the video or adjusting or changes being made to those videos. And when you push those out, right, it does make a questionable statement on if there is actual to the validity of it, right? Because if you just look at the speed, right, and you just look at the speed, are they still portraying an integritous video? In some instances, yes, because it's not doctored in the way of the content, it's doctored in the way of speed. And so that's the intern should sue Acosta for accosting her. I like it. So I think it's interesting that CNN wants to sue them. I do not know how this is going to play out, right? I'm not a legal expert. I'm somebody who tries to follow the legal side of things. I try to look into things on the legality side and understand like standing and understand how evidence is being portrayed. But looking at that, right, you can at least say that there's some dishonesty when you manipulate the speed of a video and portray that out in order to get people onto your side. I think that certainly is misleading, but I'm not sure if it does go to the level of slander or defamation. It'll be interesting to see the way that court case goes if it does make it in. And of course, I will try to keep my eyes out and keep you guys in with the update. They took out frames. They took out 3 frames. I didn't know that they took out frames. I thought they had just sped it up. So that would make sense, right? If you take out 3 frames, then that would speed it up. But I thought, so when you look at the doctored videos versus the regular video, right? One of the guys I tweeted out his video was you have it next to each other, and the way that the frames worked was that you had her arm coming across in the normal video, and she touches, and then Jim Acosta touches, and the way that the video came from the administration, and the ways that the speed was adjusted, it made it look as if his hand touched her first, and so it comes down to that, and so it does. I'm not sure how you adjust it to make it work like that, because it wouldn't be just necessarily a speed thing, but that's all the people have been saying, is that it is a speed thing. So obviously I need a little more research on that, but if you guys could provide more with that, maybe the 3 frames, maybe just manipulating the frames and changing them around, that would also be able to provide that with the story, right? Because if frame 4 is her touching him and frame 5 is him touching her, and you flop 5 and 4, you would actually have him touching her first, and then he would be the quote unquote aggressor in that situation. He would be the one making contact first. It's purely speculation on my side as to how that works. I'm not going to say that I'm an expert or know it all, but it's certainly disheartening that you're seeing the White House administration push something out there. I think that for the honesty side of things, it should certainly be denounced immediately as soon as it came out, as soon as the story started coming in, and I haven't seen enough people really fight against that. So it'll be interesting to see the way that all that plays out. So, in other big news right now, we got President Trump sitting over there in Paris, or sitting over there in Europe, floating around, having a good old time. So the comment is how does an intern not touch someone when they need to get the microphone? He's pushing her off. So the problem is it okay to take from somebody something that you asked from them, right? So we're getting into we're going back to kindergarten effectively. Is it proper? And I'm not trying to diminish what you're saying. I'm not. I got you. Okay. When it comes to that, right? When it comes to, all right, I don't want this person to have a microphone, I get to take it from them. No, right? We don't take it from people, right? Just because somebody has something that you don't want them to have anymore doesn't mean that you come up and take it from them. You ask them, you talk to them, you treat them as an adult, you treat them as a person, regardless of how rude they are, regardless of how nonsensical they are, regardless of how egregious they are, regardless of if calling them a journalist can be somewhat misleading and almost be slanderous. You don't go down to that level. You don't go to that extent and go, I'm just going to grab this from you, right? Because that portrays you in a negative light. That portrays that intern in a negative light. And certainly by association, it makes the administration look bad. So yes, right? Jim Acosta should have given it up as soon as he was told to, right? He should have respected the rules, the courtesies, and everything else, but he did not. And so two wrongs don't make a right on that one, right? And I know a lot of people are so here's another good comment. The Republicans are expected to be perfect at all times, and Democrats can violate laws with impunity equals Hillary. So I don't think that we should ever have the standard where we hold separate standards for based on where your political affiliation is, right? I'm an objectivist, right? I'm somebody that wants to look at the Republican Party the same as I look at the Democratic Party, the same as I look at the Libertarian Party, same as I look at independents, the same as I look at anyone and everyone, right? We hold the same standards for everyone, regardless on your core convictions, regardless of your people. And If Obama was doing this, right, I would be standing right here criticizing him. If George W. Bush was criticizing or doing this, I would be criticizing him. It's all about having that principle, having that core conviction, and making sure that core conviction is not about your party. It's not about your idolatry. It's about holding the standard proper. And so, absolutely, right. We can look. Yes, that would have been a good way. So the comment was the sound guy / girl should have turned the mic off. Absolutely. But it's really about upholding these standards and expecting better of everybody. Sure, if one party is perfect, is quote unquote perfect, right? That's great. That's fantastic. But sadly, that's unattainable, that's unachievable, and it's unrealistic. And so we should continually push for both sides to be better, right? When it comes to the votes right now going on in GA, in Florida, in Arizona, right? There's obviously some serious corruption, at least from the outside looking in, right? It definitely looks very, very corrupt. And that certainly needs to be addressed. That certainly, all the publicity that it's getting, I don't think it's getting enough, but it's getting some, and it needs more. It certainly does need more. You won't get anywhere with Trumpsters thinking like that. See, now you're just pushing a divide amongst people, right? Because Thomas, I think that you would also, when it comes to Obama or when it comes to a Democrat, I think that you would also have the same level of objectivity that Trump supporters have for Trump, right? You're probably more libertarian than conservative. Oh, I am a libertarian. But we need to stop. We need to take a page out of Pete and Dan's book and work less on just criticizing the other side and just be the better one yourself. When you step up and you go, look, I messed up, or this guy's messing up, but that doesn't mean I have to mess up, right? That's how we work towards a better country. That's how we work to a better united front, and we can actually have conversations again. We can stop talking past each other. And so it's calling out the other side is good, but it's not going to get you anywhere. Calling out your own side, you may ostracize yourself a little bit, but in the long run, you're going to get people back to you. One of the things that really hurt me recently was that the James Gunn situation, right? I had my core convictions, right? My idea on what comedians can say and what they cannot say is the same as what you and I can say and not say, right? And that means that if you say something egregious, you say something that's reprehensible, you say something that's disgusting, you can say it, right? I don't agree with it. I don't like it. I don't want you to say that, but you're going to say what you want to say. And there's nothing that I should be doing about it. And so with the James Gunn situation, we saw people that became outraged and became, they used the same tactics that the left had used before. And so that actually really hurt me. That hurt my following. That hurt the people that were viewing me, right? I don't have a huge Twitter following. I think I'm at like 693 people right now. At the time I was at like 500 and I went down to 430. So, I mean, I lost a good chunk of percentage wise there. On Periscope, I think I lost like 700 viewers or 700 followers, but it was more about being right to myself. It was more about standing up for my core convictions and letting that drive me rather than, hoping that you guys will be able to, hoping that, or changing what I'm saying in order to make sure that I'm pleasing you guys. I would much rather be honest with myself and follow in the pursuance of my own views than to fold just for you guys, right? And that's not to diminish you guys. That's not to make you guys smaller, to make you guys less, make it seem like you guys are less or less worthy than myself. But it's more about the idea that I would rather you guys come here, whether you agree or disagree, so that you guys can see exactly what I'm saying. You guys can understand what I'm saying, rather than trying to mold myself to you. You guys can accept me for who I am, or you can reject me for who I am. But it is me. That is me. It will always be me. Those are my principles. Those are my values. That's what's important. And when it comes to this Dan Crenshaw thing, when it comes to a lot of these situations, right, people hold a standard for the other side that they won't hold for themselves. I remember back 5-10 years ago when Republicans, conservatives were advocates, and they were saying, look, you can make jokes about gay people, you can make jokes about trans people, you can make jokes about this group or that group, and your political correctness, you can screw off with that stuff. I don't need to be politically correct. We're doing it for laughs. We're doing it because it's not our views, but we're doing it because it's edgy and we enjoy it and it makes us laugh, and people are going to be offended about it, and that's okay, right? You can just turn it off. You can change the channel. And now what is occurring is that people are saying, you know what? I don't like that you touched this sacred cow, right? I don't like that you made a joke about these military. I'd rather disagree and respect you. I appreciate that. That's beautiful. Thank you, SoCal. Thank you, Cheryl. And I lost where I was. But it's really a big thing, right? That we remain principled on that. Because when conservatives have that stance from 5-10 years ago, and now they're holding the stance, well, this person made a joke about a veteran, and that's just completely unacceptable. That's completely intolerable. And because it was about a veteran, it's no longer a joke, but it's just a referendum. We're certainly moving the goalposts, and people are trying to be the arbiters of this. They're trying to be the arbiters of speech, which is the exact thing that people were advocating against before when it came to the political correctness culture. So it would be much better if we were to just accept that people are going to have stupid jokes, they're going to have egregious jokes, reprehensible jokes, and it is what it is. It is what it is. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to laugh at it. It doesn't have to be something that is a success. It could be a complete failure for them, and I think that the Pete one was. It was a complete failure. And we can look at that and say, yep, he failed. He took his blowback. He made an apology, and we can move on with life. And I'm worried that people are not standing with their core convictions, and instead they're standing for, you have to support these people because I support these people, and it doesn't work. Listen to Judge Janine Shapiro's take and investigation on who's behind Florida election issue now. I will check into it. I will certainly look into those two. I'm not huge. I don't listen to Ben Shapiro that often anymore. I listen to him sparingly, just whenever it comes up, whenever I got some time. Ben Shapiro, I agree with him on ideologically on some things, and I disagree vehemently with others. That's why a lot of Dems are walking away. I think Democratic part has been taken over by socialists. Yes, so the Democratic Party has been taken over by the Democratic extremists, if you will, the socialists and the communists. They're starting to become much more prevalent within that group and that movement, and it's certainly a scary time for America. From 70 years ago, 80 years ago, when socialism and communism was just sheer destruction around the world, and now people are coming out of college and not knowing about the truth and the flaws of those systems, and so they advocate for it. One of the byproducts of that is, of course, the libertarian movement grew. It's grown immensely, and it's still growing. And hopefully, one day, the Libertarian Party will be something that is comparable to the other duopolies. Best to listen to all sides. Equal lies always with sold with a little bit of truth. Truth will survive, and lies die. Yeah. It's great to listen to both sides because you can actually hear where the truths are, you can hear where the lies are, and you can also, if you listen to both sides, you'll be able to fact check quite a bit quicker. You'll be able to understand what is the truth and what is the falsehoods, just based on really, I wouldn't say necessarily where it's coming from, but kind of where it's coming from. right? You can see when people have their narrative and their view, right? So when you come into my show and we're talking about a specific government policy, a specific government program, right? I'm not going to, I'm not capable of finding things that I find beneficial for having the government run. And so I won't portray that to you. But what I will do is I'll talk about specific events, specific policies, specific laws, and the ways that they failed others, and you can quickly fact check those, but you know that I'm omitting some part of it, some part that some progressive will say, well, this is what this is going to do, right? Gun control does this, this, and this. And, you know, I have talking points against those, but I'm not providing you with both sides. So you can learn a little bit more and you can actually figure out where the truth is based on your own views on how things are being applied and working out. So, you know, I've always encouraged people, don't just look at me. Don't just look at a conservative. Don't just look like at a liberal or a progressive, right? Look at everybody. Get as much information as you can. You have one life to live. Why not be as informed as humanly possible? Plug your nose and listen to the radio. listen to NPR, and hopefully you'll continue to make it better that way. It's a big thing right now. So I wanted to give a little recap of what happened last night. Went on, like I was saying at the beginning of the show, I went on makethepointradio.com. I was down in Columbia, South Carolina, from the 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern time slot, and it was a great time. I went on with Shane Sweeney and a good guy Brent and Blake. So it was a great time. It was because they had announced it. It was 3 anarchists and myself, right? A constitutional minarchist. And so it was a great time. We were talking about libertarianism, about growing it, and about the marketing. And I realized a lot of flaws that I have in the way that I discuss things with you guys. So here's a nice learning point for you guys, right? When I'm marketing things, and this is good for you guys right along with me. When you're talking about something, let's say you're talking about healthcare, and you're talking to somebody that wants single payer healthcare, that wants universal healthcare, right? I think for the most part, most of us will. Welcome in from Texas. I think for the most part, most of us in here are not in favor of single payer. We're not in favor of universal healthcare, of having the government provide us with these healthcare. But the notion is still the same, that we all want people to be covered. We want people to be covered and taken care of, to be able to get their health care and get everything that they want. It's just about the implementation. And so when you're having these discussions, sell it on the idea that, hey, look, the ends we agree on. It's just about the means. It's just about the way that it comes about. And you can talk about the free market, and you can talk about the faults of the current system and everything else, but you got to make sure that when you're talking to somebody, you show them, hey, look, I'm just as compassionate as you. I'm just as loving and caring for each and every one of the American people in this country. We disagree on the methodology. And all too often, something that from that conversation that I reflected on and I learned was that all too often we miss that first part. We miss the part where we say, yes, we all want to be taken care of, and we just go straight into the issues of their system, right? And so this is a way that we lose that conversation quite often from the other ones. I know you're in favor of universal healthcare, Thomas. I know I haven't swung you yet to the ideas that government providing something doesn't mean that everyone gets it and that it's efficient or it's effective or it's the best that you can get, or that even the elderly will always be able to obtain healthcare, right? Death panels are a common occurrence within national healthcare systems, that the wait times won't grow, that the cost to the American taxpayer will actually increase, which means your taxes increase, which means that you're paying for your neighbors, and for a system that that your desired results will never be what the reality brings. You're giving the private sector so much trust. Why is that? Why do I give the private sector more trust than the free market? I would love to see your assessment as to why I would give the free market more trust than I would the government. While you're thinking about that, while you're reflecting on that, right? The reasons behind why a free market will be better than a government on any system, on every system out there, is the idea that government is one corporation. They're one provider. And if you look at that in that way, and you say, well, we can make changes, right? What is something that the government is capable of doing when it comes to providing that the free market is incapable of doing? Right? And there's nothing, right? There's absolutely nothing that the government can provide that the free market cannot. And so when you have the free market, when you have less regulations, when you have less obstacles, less hurdles, less mountains to climb through, what you will have is more competition. So you can either err on the side of one corporation being able to control everything, being able to dictate everything, or you can have multiple corporations, multiple businesses fighting to get as many consumers as they can. Right? So if you have one that's corrupt and you have a bunch of smaller ones that aren't as corrupt, over time, those smaller ones will get more business. Big corrupt one will start to fail, and they'll have to figure out and reassess and fix their things. So weighing on the side of one, you're putting all of your eggs in one basket. And I don't think that something as important as healthcare, as saving the lives of people, you should be betting on one side. That you should be betting on one entity, right? Because I realize like the severe differences between healthcare and cell phones, but let's look at cell phones, right? If I told you right now you have to pick one cell phone company, and that is going to be the sole cell phone company for the rest of ever, right? All the other companies are going to be dropped off. They're going to be disbanded, dispersed, and destroyed. No one else is going to be providing you with a cell phone. That cell phone company may be the best cell phone company of today. It may be the best provider of cell phones, right? They may have the best services. They may have cheaper costs. They may be better in a whole litany of ways for today. But in 20 years, with a lack of competition, do you think that they will be nearly as good as they would have been without, or if they had competition, right? When you are competing against others for a consumer base, you will have better quality services. You will have better quality goods, right? Because it's all about, this company was able to do this, and I have to beat that out. I have to beat them. I got to get more consumers. I have to get more people that are sick to coming to my side, right? This is why you'll see across the country, you'll go to areas and you'll see them have billboards on their ER billboards, and they'll say, look, it's only an 8-minute wait, it's a 9-minute wait, it's a 6-minute wait, and they'll actually actively broadcast that out. Why is that? Because they want you to know that you're going to get quick, fast service. They won't tell you how much it costs because there's government regulation there, but they will tell you exactly how long you're going to be waiting before you receive that service. Do you think that if the company was doing this on their own, if they had a monopoly, which is effectively what universal healthcare is, do you think that they would be sitting there and going and boasting about how great they are, or how much better than the non-competition they are? Of course not, right? There's nothing driving them to be better. There's only the demands of the people, and the people always want the perfect system. And when you're betting on one, there's not enough options out there to really drive that change. That's a stupid argument when it comes to phones. It's all slow, totally fraud. Really? So I instead of just saying the argument is flawed or the argument is dumb, feel free to enlighten us. Feel free to enlighten us on how that was a dumb argument. We can buy almost everything from China except insurance. We can't buy insurance across state lines, right? That's one of the big issues. That's one of the things that Bernie Sanders himself was advocating for. And we can't buy it across country lines. That's another issue, right? Pharmaceutical drugs, pharmaceutical tools, right? These are things that we should be able to buy from more people, right? And that's going to drive down the cost. So this is government regulation standing in the way of cheaper goods, services and goods to you, the people. But you think that increasing the power, increasing the capacity for the government to run these things will somehow make it better. And I failed to see the logic within that, right? That's a stupid argument, man. Stop it. You sound like an idiot. See, this is always the fun part, right? Is whenever you actually put out an argument and you correlate things and you portray out a pretty strong analogy and you point out the fallacies behind it, people would rather just call you an idiot or call you stupid rather than being able to discuss what's actually being brought up. Because they set a price. Companies set prices. Yes, I agree that companies set prices. Do you know what they set their prices on? They set it based on the competition. They set it based on the supply and the demand, right? So if nobody's buying your business at $10 million, right, you don't just set the price at $11 million and expect more people to pay, right? There's the supply and demand curve. And so what you're doing is when you have more competition, there's less demand for your specific one. Your supply goes down, your prices drop, demand goes up, right? Because if your quality is not as good, right, you can't charge as much. And when you can't charge as much, more people will be able to take it. More people on the lower ends will be able to take it. Now, I think that, one of the things that Dave Smith on his show, Part of the Problem, his podcast, fantastic podcast, you guys should check it out. Great comedian. Always a good time listening to him. He was talking about things like televisions, and he was correlating this to the technology, to the technological development. And that's the biggest part of healthcare, is the technological development. And so he was talking about TVs, and he was like, look, poor people today have better TVs than the rich people did 10 years ago, than 20 years ago, than 30 years ago, certainly 30 years ago. 20 years you're getting into the iffy situation. 10 years, if poor people just bought a TV this year, is better than rich people of 10 years ago. There is still that capacity there. But that you take that logic, you take that reasoning, and you apply that to healthcare. So televisions have very little market or regulations and controls by the government. If you apply that also to healthcare, why would the systems be different? And I think that they would trend in a similar way. If we got the government out of healthcare 30 years from now, I think that poor people would have a better coverage than our best coverage here right now today. I think that there's sound logic, absolute sound logic behind that. Perfect correlations and everything else. Of course, if you have the bias that government is going to be better for it than everyone else, right, you're going to disagree with these things. But understanding markets, understanding the economics of it, and how all this operates and works out, right, it does go that way, right? When you have more competition, things get better. When you have more people trying to compete for things, right, the drive, the curve of growth steepens, right? More people are doing better things to be able to survive and continue on providing. And in the long run, as time goes on, you're just going to see better advancements. You're just going to see bigger leaps of growth. So you said you're wrong. They set the price on what people can afford and the max they will pay. So in some essence, sure, they do set it on the max that the most people will pay. So there's actually is the curve, right? So there is the max in which people will pay, because there's somebody out there that's willing to pay $10,000 for this specific TV. They're willing to because they have a stupid amount of money. But when you bring that down to, say, $5,000, when you bring that down to $3,000, what you're actually going to do is you're actually going to increase your profits. More people will buy those televisions at a lower cost, and so you actually increase your profitability. As long as you don't go below your cost, then you're still making a profit, and you'll make a bigger profit off of smaller sales, right? This is the same reason why tax revenue went up when we had the tax cuts. You have more interactions with a less of a profit. The outcome is still a higher profit, a higher revenue. And that same thing would be applied for the market. So yes, they are in essence trying to get as much money as possible out of this, but they also cannot just go to the max, whoever the highest bidder is. They have to go within the groups. And then what that creates, though, is there are people that are not willing to pay more than $1,500 for a said TV, and the price is $1,600. So you have all these people that are $1,500 or less that they now are in demand for a television. They're in demand for a TV. And so another company will be able to come out and say, hey, this TV is not nearly as good. It may not, it may be marginally worse, or it may be quite a bit worse, but here's a TV that's within your price range. That's something you won't be able to get when it comes to the government. Now, what the government will do is the government will say, look, right now the CBO score says, or the CBO says that it's $32 trillion over 10 years. So about $3.2 trillion per year. And they said that these numbers were conservative in the way that they were smaller. They would see a larger growth over time. It would continue to grow. So over time, you're just going to spend more and more over time. You're going to see more lobbyists involved. You're going to see more bureaucrats. You're going to see more money going into the government and less of it going to the actual providers of healthcare and services, and so the result is we need more money. We need more money, says the government, and so they take a little bit more, and by percentage, right, the amount that goes to the healthcare providers goes down some more, right? It goes down 1% more. We need more money. We need more money, and they continually drive up the tax rates. They continue to do this, right? And when you look at the beginning of our country, we had a 3% tax on tea. And that was justification enough in order to fight against this. Dave Smith podcast. Yes, that was a part of the problem. Health companies don't want competition. Nobody wants competition. That's why the government has a monopoly on a lot of different markets. But yes, health companies don't want competition. Nobody wants competition except for the consumer. We should be able to buy only what coverage was needed for health insurance. Yes, I agree, right? We should be able to pick and choose what we want to, but when you have somebody enacting exact minimums of what you're required to have, such as Obamacare, where even men that are paying for health insurance are required to pay for things like maternity leave. They're paying for things like feminine care, right? Because you're paying for everyone. You're not just paying for yourself. So things like Obamacare really does get away from that notion that you're able to pay for just what you want to. Health companies are always going to run at a loss because of young and old people are all stupid. You are really an idiot. Okay, that's cool. Kids would still be sorting coal with their feet if government never stepped in. Really, that's an interesting idea. I think that as technology advanced, less people would be sorting coal with their feet. Why can't we outlaw lobbyists? Because the problem is that when you try to outlaw lobbyists, right? Because a lot of our our legislative branch, a lot of these people, even though they throw their names on these bills, these aren't the originator of the bills. It's actually from these lobbyists, it's from these lawyers, and it's from these different special interest groups. They come out and they say, hey, I want this to happen. And they go, all right, I can get on board with that. They pass the bill, and that's the way that it goes. So it's not a matter. It's not a matter of the lobbyists are the problem. The problem is that our system is predicated on the necessity of them, because our legislative branch is ineffective. They don't know what they're doing. They're just your average citizen, right? We can see just of how dolt-like a large swath of the population is, regardless of which political affiliation you are. You can see that there's plenty of people out there that just have absolutely egregious views that aren't based on any principles or values, but just the necessity or just the desire to provide. And so they enact these systems and they don't know how to fix them. They can't fix simple problems, so why would they be able to fix a complex problem? And so you just have lobbyists that are muddying up the waters, getting what they want, getting what they need. And the legislators think that it's actually going to work. They think that it's going to make things better. And so my desire to fix this is actually to uphold the Constitution, to only allow Congress, the federal Congress, the authority to act in the ways that the powers were already enumerated and delegated to them through Article 1, Section 8, right? The power of the purse section of the first article, which is congressional power, right? So if they are only upholding that end of what they are, then not only is the scope of government going to be much smaller, but the necessity for lobbyists, for bureaucrats, that drops drastically. It drops off markedly. And so we all want competent leaders. We all want people that are competent. And when you give them more and more authority over more things, and they've already proven to us, the people, that they are unable to run a system, run a corporation, to run a market efficiently or effectively, the desire shouldn't be to give them one more thing, right? If you have a worker at work, let's say you're running a McDonald's and you have a cashier, and the cashier can't add 2 + 2. The cashier can't hit the right buttons. The cashier can't take an order properly. The cashier is constantly yelling at the other employees, yelling at the customers, not providing customer service, right? You wouldn't promote them to being the manager. You wouldn't promote them to being the supervisor, right? You'd be like, that's absolutely contrary to any good business plan and everything else. And so why do we do this with Congress, right? Congress has 11% approval rating, and that's like high end. But yeah, we're advocating for them to have more power, and eventually the insanity must stop. Eventually the insanity must stop. Mom says your Hot Pockets are ready. Mom, I need lasagna. They know better. They just know it's never good for us. They just need the cash. So why do we give them power to make this cash? Why do we give them the power to have the lobbyists come in and buy off people that may be already leaning towards that opinion, or already have that opinion, or have that value? Why do we give them that authority, right? Shouldn't we be decentralizing? I don't think that the people of Connecticut should be controlling the people of Massachusetts, and I don't think the people of California should be controlling the people of Texas, right? The people of Texas should be controlling the people of Texas in a more serious manner than the people of California, right? So the federal government was never there to help regulate all across the country. They were there to protect the country. And it was the state's powers, it was the state's authority to run these things. So if you want healthcare, if you want universal healthcare, you should be enacting it in your own state and proving that it can work there before you try and enact it on all 50 of the states. So I realize, Unbroken, that you hate idiots, and I know that you've displayed that you're incapable of handling dissenting views from yourself. But if you really can't handle it, there is an X button on your top right of your screen. Earliest Congress had many more reps when building built in D.C., put less seats, less reps. Used to be governors were elected, and governors appointed senators. Citizens paid attention to governor races. Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. The 17th Amendment that moved it from having state power, right? Your state representatives were electing your federal senators to ensure that the 9th and 10th Amendment was protected, that the federal level wasn't going to grow and become over and cumbersome and just be infringing upon everybody. So the states were represented by the Senate, and then we enacted the 17th Amendment, and now your federal Senate, your federal House of Representatives are both voted on by a popular vote. Is so contrary to the original tenor of the state's compact, and knowing that, and I'm so thankful that somebody brought that up. I can't even read your name. HVD Dreams. I'm just going to call you Dreams. So yeah, so Dreams, thank you for bringing up that comment. Perfect. South blew it with the racism in the 60s. The feds had to step in. Ooh, so are you talking about the Jim Crow era, where laws were enacted by the government because the corporations weren't willing to, didn't want to force this segregation, but the state stepped in, was like, you guys have to be racist, you guys have to segregate? Is that which one you were talking about? Is that what you were referencing there, Thomas? Because I agree with you, right? The state stepped in, and the state was absolutely egregious during the Jim Crow era. Or no, sorry, Jim Crow era was before the 60s and whatnot. But yeah, no, it was this issue where not enough of the corporations, not enough of the market was like, hey, I just want to sell my goods to people. I don't really care what skin color they are. I just want to be able to sell my goods and provide for my family. And the state's like, no, no, no. You need to have segregation, good sir. You can't sell that to a person that's black. You're white. You got to stay segregated, right? The state stepped in. And people, for some reason, people were like, oh, it must be that all people are racist. It's the companies that were racist because they were upholding these laws. Except for the people didn't want to go to jail, right? People were afraid to fight against the state. They were afraid to fight against the laws. And so that's what I've been advocating for, right? Is when you see unjust laws and we fight against them, right? Just like when the state says, you can't put this into your body, right? Right now we're seeing different governments like New York saying, hey, don't put a vape pen in your mouth. Don't you put a vape pen in your mouth. That's not acceptable. That's not tolerable. Don't you do that. Right? My question is what authority do you have over telling me what I'm allowed to put into or not allowed to put into my body? We should be allowed to. Absolutely. The feds did not step in. Blacks still wouldn't be able to vote. So what you're saying is that a federal or a voting system, which is ran by the government, wasn't unable to allow black people to vote. And so the federal government had to step in to stop the government. So what you're saying still is that the government was standing in the way of unity, of allowing to tear down the walls of segregation, if you will. So I agree with you. So what about getting rid of the young and old so Medicare can make more profit? So I'm not interested in making Medicare make profit, right? So Medicare is funded by federal tax dollars. I'm not a fan of government providing this, right? I'm a fan of free markets. When it comes to getting rid of young and old people, right? I don't believe in getting rid of people. I don't believe in killing people. I don't believe in the gulags. I don't believe in just denying people services just because of their age or because of their condition, right? I believe in a market that allows for people to receive services for the services in which they pay for. Right? So I think I'm already grown up enough. Okay, so you're not American, so you think you're grown up enough. See, I'm interested in what you're saying because it's just riddled with ad hominems, and I realize like we may be speaking a different language because you've been effectively a statist your entire life, and that's fine, right? There's plenty of statists here in America, but I think that you'd get a lot better of a reaction if you were a little bit less hostile with the people that you're discussing with. Vaping as you speak. Oh, SoCal, Cheryl, my lady, you can't be doing the vaping stuff, man. The vaping stuff is bad, okay? There's people that do bad things and they also vape, and so by the lines, you doing bad stuff by just vaping. You can't do that. You can't smoke. You certainly shouldn't be drinking, right? Prohibition was a good thing. It was effective, right? As soon as prohibition came in, right, all drinking stopped. No, of course not, right? But, so the government wants to step in and do all these things, and it just shows itself to be worthless. We need to stand against the government controlling us, right? Understand the core values, understand the roots of our country and why we became what we became, why the constitutional republic was supposed to be a limitation on them, and why that was, right? Because we were supposed to be 50 different experiments, not one giant experiment with slight minuscule variations between them all. It was supposed to be like 50 different countries. Medicare should be voucher systems instead of blanket coverages. I disagree with it at all. We pay for Medicare. Yes, I agree. Oh, were you answering to him? Yes. I'm happy about the vape laws. High school kids will vape even more now it's against the law. They will vape even more now that it's against the law? So you're just talking about like the rebellions of the young kids? I don't see where the authority for the government to tell you what you can or cannot do, right? If I'm smoking cigarettes, if I'm dipping tobacco, right? I'm not hurting anyone but myself. Where's their authority to do this? Yeah, no singing, no dancing, no having fun, and you will enjoy it. The beatings will continue until morale increases. Ugh! That is the way of the government. That is the way of the military. That is the way of everything that the government does, right? We will just keep beating you until you are happy about it, until you are just a little sadist. Oh, you just keep on getting hit. It is what it is. Look, your smoking is costing me and our government billions. I wish that it didn't. I wish that smoking didn't cost you a thing. I wish it didn't cost the government a thing. I wish that it costed only the smoker or something, right? It costs them the money to buy the cigarettes. It costs them the money to buy the tobacco, whatever it is. And then if they get cancer, if they get health illnesses from that, right, they go and pay their insurance company. Their insurance company goes and pays the hospital, and then they go and get seen, right? Perfect system, right? My decision shouldn't affect your paycheck. My decisions or your decisions shouldn't affect my paychecks, right? We should be individuals in this country. We are all individuals in this country. Have you ever met somebody that you 100% agree with? If you have, you probably haven't dove down deep enough into their ideologies, because everyone disagrees with everyone on something. And so you shouldn't be able to control the actions of another, and I shouldn't be able to control the actions of you or any other. Vape is 1,000% safer, so that's statistically an anomaly, but that's fine. But our taxes pay for your smoking. Well, there's the smoking sin tax, and so I'm paying it. Everyone must be Southern Baptist, yeah. Paying for healthcare for smokers later in age. I don't want to pay for anyone's healthcare, regardless of their age. Vaping is taking smokers off tobacco. Yes, it's been effective at that, and it's interesting that now the government's stepping in the way of that. And they're like, no, you guys got to go back to the cigarettes. Go back to the dip. Go let your lungs fall out and your jaw fall off. It's good. You're paying the taxes on the tobacco. I agree. I'm paying the taxes on the tobacco, right? I'm paying so that I can enjoy something. I'm trying to have a transaction between me and the person selling the tobacco, and the government says, no, you got to pay me too, right? You got to give me some money too. That doesn't make sense, but it is what it is. That's the way that the government runs. It steals from you when you get paid. It steals from you when you spend your money, and it steals from you when you die. When you buy land and you own land, it steals money from you. You pay the rent every year. You pay your property taxes, right? There is no freedom in America. There is no liberty in America. We are all being controlled. We're all being subverted. And it's about time that we all wake up to this notion and we start stepping away. Start advocating against it and start fighting against it. So with that, guys, I want to say thank you all for coming in tonight, for enjoying the discussion. I appreciate all the dissent and everyone coming in, whether you agreed or disagreed. Hopefully you guys took something away from tonight. And thank you all for your support. Thank you all for the likes, for the retweets, the shares. And for those of you who joined in last night, thank you for that as well. And I will be seeing you guys again here, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys tune in for that. We'll have another lively show and good topics and good discussion. So thank you all once again. I hope you guys all have a great night, and hope you guys enjoyed your weekend. And I'll see you guys Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Have a good one.